Chapter 4 Night with Tree Mother. Hepatica found the great beech easily enough, but the stairs were not as easy to climb as they had been with Tree Mother holding her hand. Even so, she managed in time and came at last to the very top, up into the moonlight that made everything as bright as day, but with so different a brightness. She had rather expected Tree Mother to be waiting for her in the top of the tree. She was disappointed to find herself alone on the topmost branches. Well, if Cloud could only see her now, he would not think her too small and afraid to play with, for she was going to jump right up and out into the moonlight and into a house which she could not see. She shut her eyes as last night and jumped. When she opened them again, she was standing just within a window of the Leaf Bow house, and Tree Mother was holding her hands. If Hepatica was glad to see Tree Mother seemed just as glad to see Hepatica. She wanted to hear all about Hepatica's first day in the forest, and she listened to every word, just as your mother listens to your adventures. But Hepatica had never had a mother to remember, and so this was wonderful to her. At last, Tree Mother said, "And didn't they wonder where you lived? What did you tell them about that?" "Oh, I just said in the top of a tree. I wanted them to find out for themselves that you were my mother too, even if I am a human." Tree Mother nodded her head. Her eyes shone gladly. "If you had told them you were with me, Hepatica," she said, "then you might never have found the way back to me. But the forest was right when it told me to keep you. It knew what kind of little human you were." "I really wanted to tell Cloud," she said. "If I had told him, do you suppose it would have made him more glad to play with me?" Tree Mother shook her head. "No, Hepatica, not at all. He simply would not have believed you, and you would not have found your way back here. Do you think I shall find my way to the winged pine tomorrow?" "No, you cannot find your way there alone. Cloud knows very well that you can't do that. But we will give the proud boy a surprise. I shall take you there." "Then he does not want to play with me," Hepatica said with a bowed head. "I am not sure of that. And Hepatica, if I, Tree Mother, want you for my little girl, why should not Cloud, wild, proud boy that he is, want you for a comrade?" "But he doesn't know that you do," whispered Hepatica. Tree Mother laughed at her. "And you mustn't tell him. If he can't find you out without that, then so much the worse for him." Now Hepatica noticed for the first time that Tree Mother's sky-blue dress was covered with a soft dark robe that fell quite to the floor all about her. It was as though she had wrapped herself in the twilight that was in the forest below. "Yes, I am in my wraps," Tree Mother said, for she could read Hepatica's thoughts easily enough. "We are not going to sleep here tonight, but are off on a journey over the forest. Come." She turned Hepatica to the window, and there, just outside of it, a strange little boat stood poised in the air. It was shaped like a gondola, and made of boughs and twigs. The sails were dark and soft like a moth's wings. Tree Mother stepped down from the window into the boat. Hepatica followed, full of wonder. Tree Mother motioned her to sit down on the floor of the boat. It was made of pine boughs and was as soft as the couch. It had a sleepy, lovely smell too. Tree Mother stood in the bow, but first she bent and drew up a soft robe over Hepatica. It was as smooth and soft as a bird's wing. Tree Mother spoke to her boat, and slowly it sailed off over the forest roof. "No, it's not alive," she told Hepatica. "It cannot understand my words, but it is made of living things, and they obey my words, as the waves of the ocean obey the wind. The waves do not understand what the wind says, but they move before it faster." The boat suddenly gained speed to the forest children's houses. The boat dipped and slowly glided down among the branches of the trees. Tree Mother stopped it before it touched the ground. "I will be gone only a minute," she told Hepatica, and vanished among the trees. She was gone only a minute, but in that minute Hepatica fell sound asleep. Tree Mother awoke her when she came back with someone in her arms. "This is the littlest forest child," she said. "In spite of the chill in the upper air, it is a very warm night down here in his little moss house, and he was sleeping restlessly. He will sleep much better on the journey with us, and in the morning never remember where he has been." She bent to Hepatica, showing her the child on her breast. Even in the moonlight, Hepatica could see that he was a chubby little fellow, with red gold curls all over his head and golden lashes resting on cheeks like flower petals. He was sound asleep. Tree Mother laid him softly down by Hepatica, his head against her shoulder. Then she covered them both with the soft robe. She herself stood erect in the stern, and with a word sent the boat up, 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 high above the tree tops. Now and then they would dip back into the forest for Tree Mother to leave a message or do a service for one of the forest people. Between the stops, Hepatica slept as soundly as the little forest child, for although it was so wonderful to be gliding above the forest in a boat with wings for sails, Hepatica just could not keep her eyes open. All night Tree Mother stood still and quiet above them, directing her boat sometimes to a bird fairy's nest, where she left a message, sometimes down to the brook, where she whispered to the blue water children as they slept. For Tree Mother talks with the forest people, while they are asleep more often than when they are awake. They do not remember the words in the morning, but they remember the meaning. Just before dawn she roused Hepatica. The child sat up and rubbed her eyes, having no idea for a minute where she was. But there was Tree Mother, and there was the whole waking sky, and here beside her was a little boy, his red gold curls agleam on Hepatica's shoulder, his eyes closed in sleep. "It is nearly dawn," Tree Mother said, "and we are not far from the winged pine. But before I leave you to wait for Cloud, I have something to tell you." Hepatica stopped rubbing her eyes and listened. "Today I am going away from the forest, to be gone for a long time. I am going in my boat beyond the city and beyond the sea, to another forest on the other side of the world. You will not see me again for days and days. But Hepatica, I am leaving the forest in your care. You must sleep in the leaf bow house, and in all the ways you can take my place." Hepatica just at first thought that Tree Mother must be joking. How could she, little ignorant Hepatica, human child, new in the forest, take the place of the mother of it all? "It is true, no one will know that you are taking my place," Tree Mother went on. "They will not even know that I am gone, but when things go wrong, you will be the one to put them right. You are queen of the forest." "But I am only a little girl, Tree Mother. How can I be queen of the forest?" "There are only two things to remember," said Tree Mother, speaking slowly. "Never be afraid, and when you do not know the way yourself, listen to the forest. Everything else will take care of itself. But, Tree Mother, interrupted. Tonight I have been very busy leaving things as straight as possible. I hand you over a kingdom at peace with itself. It is the forest that has told me to trust you, Hepatica. I have obeyed you to obey. Tree Mother had not before filled Hepatica with so much awe. For the first time Hepatica was a little afraid of her, but Tree Mother shook back her twilight hood so that her sea-foam hair escaped and blew in the strong morning wind. She knelt down in front of Hepatica and lifted the little girl's chin in her hands. "You must not be afraid." She smiled right into her eyes. She had not said the words, but Hepatica understood well enough. "I will not be afraid," she promised, "and I will listen to the forest. But oh, Tree Mother, have you forgotten that I am only a little girl?" No, Tree Mother had not forgotten that. She picked Hepatica up in her arms, and standing very tall and straight, with the child's head snuggled against her shoulder, said to the boat, "Speed." The swiftness of their flight snatched away Hepatica's breath, and straightened her hair like a banner behind her. Soon the boat sank like a bird into a wood of pines. It was almost dark down there, for the sun had not yet risen, but way off through the dark tree aisles shone a bright band of blue. It was the sea. "The wind creatures are out there, gathering for their day's adventure," said Tree Mother. "Walk straight ahead towards the blue, and you will be there as soon as the dawn." Tree Mother set Hepatica down on the pine needle floor. The little forest child still slept. "I will fly home with him, and then I am gone," said Tree Mother. "Remember all that I have said. You are in my place." Hepatica reached up her arms, and just as any human mother might do, Tree Mother gave the little girl a great hug and a kiss, then a word to her boat, and it rose straight up through pine boughs and was lost to Hepatica in the dim light. Hepatica looked up after it for a minute, and then turned her eyes and her steps down a long dark tree aisle towards the shining band of sea. As she hurried along through the dim light, she was thinking of Cloud and of how surprised he would be to see her. Chapter 5. A Message Delivered. When Hepatica came out at the edge of the pine woods, there was a strong, cool wind blowing off the sea. She shivered in her thin frock, but she straightened her shoulders, took a few deep breaths of the salt air, and jumped up and down on her toes. When she began to feel a little warmer, she looked around for the winged pine. There it was, plain to see, standing high and alone on a rocky ledge, above the water. Its boughs had grown into the shape of giant wings, and it had a look of flying. Hepatica ran up to it and stood waiting for Cloud. The rim of the sun was just above the rim of the water. At that instant, a band of wind creatures came into view around an edge of the forest. They came running and leaping directly towards the winged pine, where Hepatica stood waiting. Cloud, the fleetest, led them. When he came near enough to see Hepatica, he stopped almost in the middle of a long leap, and stood startled and amazed. But he came on. "Well, you did it," was all he could say. The others hung back, for you can imagine their surprise at seeing their brother talking to a human child. Hepatica was rather shy before their wonder. And she said nothing, but she kept her head very high just the same, for had not Cloud himself told her to be there? "Well, since you did it somehow," the proud boy said rather sulkily, "come along, but see that you keep up. And come on, you others," he cried, as he took Hepaticas' hand and started on a trot up the beach. But the other wind creatures did not follow. They could hardly believe that Cloud, the fleetest and strongest of them all, favored messenger of Tree Mother, really meant to play with a human child, a pale girl with thin legs. They thought that he must be trying some kind of a joke on them, and so they only laughed and called out, "We like our own company best. We don't play with silly humans who can't even see us." That made Cloud angry, for his comrades usually followed him in everything. He stopped and turned to face their laughter. But they were speeding swiftly away in the opposite direction, a rushing purple cloud which disappeared at once around the bend of the forest. He stamped his foot, then he tossed his head. Next he looked down at Hepatica, whose hand he was still holding. His wonderful purple eyes lightened when they met hers, and he flashed a smile, the same friendly smile with which he had first greeted her by the orchard. "We don't care, do we?" he exclaimed. "Come on, they can't bother us." And then he began running. Hepatica at once found herself running just as fast as she could, and even then she had to pull back on Cloud's hand a little. But Cloud paid no attention to that. Indeed, he went even faster. Soon Hepatica knew that she must give up, that she could not possibly keep pace with the wind creature. He seemed to know it too, for he called suddenly back to her over his shoulder, "Let go." She at once let go of his hand and stood forlorn, ashamed and disappointed. But he whirled and came back to her. "Why are you staying behind?" he asked, his purple eyes flashing. "You told me to let go," said Hepatica, fighting to keep her eyes clear of tears. Cloud laughed. "I didn't mean to let go of my hand," he cried. "Silly thing, I meant let go of yourself. Let yourself run fast, don't hold back." "How can I help holding back? I can't run as fast as you." "Oh, you don't understand. Who asked you to run as fast as me? I just said let go. You don't have to run, I can pull you along all right. Just let go." "I don't see what you mean. How can I tell you plainer? Run along naturally, don't try to keep up with me. You couldn't do that ever, you know. Just stop being afraid and you'll be all right." Well, Hepatica did not know what he meant, but she would try. So he took her hand again, and they sped away. Very soon, however, the pace was much too fast for the little human. "Let go," Cloud cried rather impatiently. "Stop being afraid." "I'm not afraid," thought Hepatica. "No, I'm not even afraid. I can't keep up to him, I can." And then she did let go, just as he had told her to do. And at once she was rushing forward with the speed of the wind. Her running feet barely touched the earth. Indeed, there were rocks and bushes that she skimmed like a bird. Never feeling them under her toes at all. So they left the shore and rushed up a hill pasture, over fences, over a brook, around a great red barn, and a gray farmhouse, down a long hill and up a wood road. They stopped under the windows of a little red schoolhouse. "Careful that they don't see you," warned Cloud. "Remember, you are a human." He stood on tiptoe and looked in at the window. "Their backs are to us," he said softly. "Climb up." Hepatica stepped onto a fallen log that lay near and peeped in, her head beside Cloud's. There were a dozen or more human children there, some of them studying, some slyly playing behind their desks, and 3 standing up in front before the teacher's table where he was hearing a lesson. The teacher was a young man of about 16 years, with eyes as blue as the sea had been that morning, and yellow tossed hair. "No, Lucy," he was saying, "brown is not an adverb. Try to think what it is." But Lucy had no idea what it was, and so she was sent to her seat. "Next," said the young teacher. As he said it, he raised his eyes and saw Hepatica looking in at the open window. He started with surprise, and Hepatica, very sorry that she had been so careless, slipped backward down off the log. Cloud stayed where he was, for there was no danger that the teacher would see him in a minute. He laughed. "Don't bother, Patty," he said. He had already nicknamed her, you see. "He thinks you're a fairy. He won't come out to hunt for you because he really thinks you aren't here." Cloud was chuckling, so Hepatica laughed, but softly. "But he did see me. How can he not believe in me?" "You have to ask a human that. I can't tell you. Come up again and watch while I take him Tree Mother's message. You'll laugh at the way they don't know that I'm in the room at all. The teacher himself won't know that I'm there, though he'll get the message all right." "How can that be?" Hepatica wondered. She got up cautiously and looked in at the window again, while Cloud went round to the door of the school. She was looking in when he entered. Although Cloud had told her that neither the teacher nor the pupils would see him at all, Hepatica could hardly believe it. He was so clear to her, splendid and real, what Cloud had known. When he walked up to the teacher's table and stood there poised, almost in a flying motion, with his wings half spread, no one noticed, though it seemed to Hepatica that he brought the very sunlight in with him, and she could hear the rustle of his wings. The teacher quickly turned his head, as though he felt what his eyes could not see. Cloud bent down to him as though to speak, but the teacher turned away again with an impatient movement and looked dreamily across the heads of the children, out of the window where Hepatica watched. This time he paid no attention to her, however, for he had made up his mind that she was not really there, and so he was clever enough not to see her. There was something restless and stormy in his sea-blue eyes. The children went on studying, or playing, or reciting. The teacher only half listened, and half watched them. He was thinking faraway thoughts. He was wondering if he would ever find his true work in the world, and what was to become of him, for he was very poor, but he had the mind of a scholar and the hopes of a young hero. Cloud meant to deliver his message, whether the teacher turned away his head or not. Hepatica heard his clear, ringing words above the hum of the studying children and the voice of the one reciting. This was the message. "Yes, it shall all be as you dream it. Tree Mother knows. You will be a hero in distant lands, and find romance in a faraway place. Believe this." Though Hepatica had heard so clearly, not a child raised his head, and the teacher did not move. They had not heard a word, but the teacher must have heard, for his face was suddenly as alight as Cloud's. He raised his head, and his eyes looked off over Hepatica's head to the tree-tops. Then he tossed his yellow hair back from his forehead. He looked all at once very like a wind creature himself. Cloud waved to Hepatica and ran laughing out of the room. He joined her behind the schoolhouse. He didn't really hear me, but he got the idea. He cried gaily, "It isn't always that I can give them even the idea, you know, but Tree Mother said that this one would be easy." And he was. "Oh, Patty, wouldn't you like to be a messenger for Tree Mother? But you never will. You're only a little human." In his joy and pride at having served Tree Mother so well, he seized Hepaticas' hands and whirled her round and round, in circles down the wood road, away from the schoolhouse. And as they whirled, Hepatica was thinking, "Oh, if you only knew! I'm not her messenger, it is true, but I am acting in her place, and I am her very own daughter too." She only thought it and did not say it, but you can imagine how she wanted to. "If I were only a blind little human, how could I see you and play with you?" she said the minute Cloud stopped his victorious whirling dance, and she had got her breath a little. Cloud laughed and threw himself down on a bed of sweet purple wild thyme in the hot sunshine. "I bet you couldn't see Tree Mother if she were standing here now," he teased. "And why couldn't I?" "Oh, because she's so beautiful that even we forest people sometimes can't see her. She's like the sky and the waving tree tops and the sun and the wind, and sometimes those are the things we see and not the real Tree Mother at all. We have to look hard to keep her apart and real, away from the things she is like. There's one time we can see her plain enough without looking hard, though. That's just as we are falling asleep, or as we are waking up. And the littlest forest child, of course, can always see her when she comes. He even says she gives him rides in her airboat at night sometimes, but that's probably dreams." Cloud had been getting sleepier and sleepier as he talked. The hot sunshine and the sweet, drowsy smell of wild thyme were the cause. Any wind creature would have fallen asleep if he had stopped there, but Hepatica did not know that, and so she was very much surprised to see his eyes suddenly close. He rolled over on his side and was at once fast asleep. Hepatica sat cross-legged in the bed of wild thyme and watched him. Oh, if he only knew what she knew of Tree Mother! However, he had been very friendly to her after his fashion. He had given her a glorious run, and he had smiled at her several times. The proud, gorgeous boy, how purple his wings were, but not so purple as his eyes. "He shan't wake up and find me just sitting, waiting for him," thought Hepatica. "He shall come to find me next time." She got up and walked away quietly towards the forest. The wind creature was too sound asleep to hear her soft going. She was hardly in the forest before the trees hid her. Almost at once she came upon the forest brook and heard children laughing. Chapter 11. Blue Water Children. It did not take Hepatica long to reach the brook. At first she could not see who was making all the laughter, for the water was being splashed about in such a way that it made a circle of rainbow curtains. But Hepatica knew that it was children's laughter. Running with her arms arched over her head, she plunged into the brook, through the water curtains. Once in the midst of the fun, she began splashing too. She was playing with the Blue Water Children. The Blue Water Children are forest children who live in the water. Their hair and eyes are blue, not as your eyes may be blue, but with the blue of still water and sunshine. Other than that, they differ from human children only in their freedom from school and from grown-up people's control, and of course in the fact that their homes are underwater. Hepatica was glad to have found them to play with. The Blue Water Children were so busy with their fun they did not notice that another child had come to play with them. Even when they suddenly started swimming downstream, they did not discover that she was a human child. It made no difference to them that Hepatica could not swim. Two of the Blue Water Children had her by the hands and pulled her along. for the Blue Water Children traveled downstream, hand in hand, pushing themselves along with their feet, or simply gliding down with the current. They chatted as they went. Their speech is very swift, and sounds, when you first hear it, like water rippling over stones and pebbles, and their laughter is like the sound of little waterfalls. So, for a while, Hepatica did not understand at all what they were talking about. When she did begin to understand, she was surprised indeed, for they were talking about her. Yes, her name is Hepatica, and she is going to live in the forest. Oh, she is as human as can be. The tree girl gave her breakfast, and she stayed there all day. And did you know that she wanted Cloud to play with her? Think of it. What did Cloud say to that? Or hasn't he heard? Oh, he has heard. He told her to be out at the winged pine tomorrow before sunrise, and she could go message-bearing with him. Here they all laughed, and Hepatica, in their midst, felt surrounded by waterfalls. Soon they were chattering again. Well, we'll learn all about her when we get to the Tree Girls. But how can she see us if she's human? Think of her expecting to play with Cloud. And the very first day she came to the forest, too. Hepatica hardly knew what to do. How could she tell them now that she was the human who interested them so much? In any case, they did not give her a chance but babbled on, and Hepatica was having a beautiful time, flowing swiftly with the stream, held up and borne along by her new playmates. In some places the low bushes and drooping tree branches seemed gently reaching to hold and tangle the children's floating hair, but the water children's hair poured through the leafy branches, never catching. As for Hepatica, she was in the midst of them, and so protected. Almost too soon for Hepatica, the brook brought them near to the Tree Girl's house. There the Blue Water Children scrambled to their feet, and shaking their blue hair till the air was all a rainbow, they ran out of the brook and were soon hurrying along the little path that led straight to the Tree Girl's door. The Tree Girl had just finished a wreath of star flowers for the littlest forest child, and was crowning him with it when the children ran up. Hepatica had seen the little boy only when he was asleep. His eyes were wide open now and full of friendly light, remembering the way he had snuggled up against her in the airboat. Hepatica could not help throwing her arms around him and kissing his clear brow. He gazed back at her, smiling and without fear. "I dreamed that I took a ride in the air with you last night," he said. "Perhaps you did." Hepatica smiled. "Oh, the littlest forest child is a great dreamer," said the Tree Girl. "But where did you pick up the Blue Water Children, Hepatica?" Then how the Blue Water Children stared. "Pick us up," they cried. Then how they laughed. Hepatica looked quickly all about to see if there were really little waterfalls somewhere making that music, but no, it was only the Blue Water Children's merriment. When they could get their breath, they exclaimed, "And you were with us all the time, and you heard all we said about you, but you were just like us. How could we tell you were a human?" And then the boldest of them asked, "How did you get out to the edge of the forest then? Perhaps you did go message-carrying with Cloud after all." They were all silent at that, for her answer, if she had really got so far all by herself through the forest in the dark night and found the winged pine, then she was indeed a strange human. Why, even Tree Girl and the forest children could not have done that, they were sure. Hepatica was sitting on the ground now, the little forest child in her lap. "Yes, I got there before Cloud did," she said, "and I did go with him to deliver his message." "But how could you ever keep up with a wind creature?" they cried in astonishment. "He pulled me along. It was like flying." "Yes, I should think it must have been. But how did you ever get so far as the winged pine at all?" "Oh, that was in my dream," began the littlest forest child. "We flew with—" But there he stopped and rubbed his eyes. "Oh, I can't remember," he cried, a little vexed. "I did remember it all, and then it went. All that I can remember now is that I did remember." The blue water children's laughter tinkled at that. "Nonsense," said the tree girl, who is as sensible as she is pretty. "It's just your dreaming." Now they were all looking wonderingly at Hepatica, waiting to be told how she had gone through the forest alone, in the night, straight to the winged pine. What should she say? "Perhaps I went in the littlest forest child's dream," she answered after a minute. "Perhaps you did," said a deep voice, and behind it Hepatica suddenly almost heard the words of the brook and the wind in the tree tops. There was the tree man, standing unnoticed in the shadow of the great beech tree, one arm stretched out along a branch, looking down smilingly on all these babbling children. At that a silence fell, for the blue water children, like all the other forest people, are in awe of the wise tree man. "This little human must eat now," he said. "Have you breakfasted yet, Hepatica?" No, Hepatica had not thought of food, so the tree girl took her into the cool kitchen with its shaking leaf shadows, and there was a bowl of milk waiting for her, and berries and brown bread. "We kept this for you," she explained. "What can I do for you then?" asked Hepatica, for out in the world she had learned that food must somehow be paid for. The tree girl looked puzzled, for that was a new idea to her. "Well, if you want to do something for me," she said after a minute, "you might mend the littlest forest child's tunic. He tore it scrambling off by himself in the forest this morning. But first you had better have breakfast." While Hepatica ate that delicious breakfast, the littlest forest child sat in the doorway and talked to her. He told her about the other forest children, about the games they played and the houses they had built for themselves out of moss in cool, shadowy places. He told her how he had made a little boat with twigs that morning and fitted a leaf to it for a sail, and then how he had floated it in the spring. He promised to show her the spring some day. It was in a secret place, but he would show her. When she had finished her breakfast, he stood close by her knee while she mended his tunic. All the time she was mending, he watched her busy fingers or looked into her eyes. When it was done, the tree girl came in and looked at the stitches carefully. She smiled. "You learn quickly, Hepatica," she said. The tree girl's praise is very sweet, and it paid Hepatica for her pricked fingers. "Now, now come with me," cried the littlest forest child. "Oh, please do, Hepatica, and I will show you our village." Hepatica very gladly went with him.